if you go into court without a lawyer, you don't know the rules of the road, and you can unwittingly put yourself in a real bad position.
What happens when family law and criminal law intersect, and where can you get help? Well, we're going to find out right now, because that's what we're going to ask the lawyer on today's episode. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and my guest today is Austin attorney Sam Bassett. I want to remind you right off the top, if you want to ask Sam questions about your situation, it's easy to do. Just go to AskTheLawyers.com. Click the button in the upper right-hand corner that says Ask a Lawyer, and it'll walk you right through the very simple process right there. Sam, it's good to see you again. Thank you for making some time to answer our questions.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you handle both family law and criminal law, and I would imagine most people don't ever think that those two intersect, but that could happen sometimes, right?
It does happen in a relationship, a marriage relationship, or a parent relationship. Issues can arise which cause criminal problems and also obviously divorce and child custody issues.
So give us some examples, some of the situations that you may have come across in your experience. I'm sure you've handled a case or two like this.
Yeah, I think that a common scenario would be if there's some sort of violence that occurs within a relationship of either people who are residing together or who are married or are dating, that can implicate both systems. You have oftentimes a protective order filed to keep people away from each other. You have an arrest, and then overlaying all that, you oftentimes have a divorce filing or a filing in court to divide their assets, and so it can be very complicated.
I would imagine it can. Now, if these abuse allegations, if they involve a child as a possible victim, how does that further complicate things? How is that handled?
Yes, it makes it even more complicated. Obviously, if it's a child physical or sexual abuse allegation, the courts will intervene quickly to try to remove a child or make sure a child is protected first and foremost. And then you have the more complicated issue of the parents of the child, and one parent being removed from the home. Another, again, a possible protective order could be filed. Criminal arrest could occur, and then a divorce and a determination of if the accused parent gets to see the child, and under what circumstances would the accused parent get to see the child, if at all.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine that makes custody decisions more difficult. Sometimes, Sam, do people make these accusations in an effort to control the custody, and maybe they're not accurate? What happens there?
Well, there are cases all over the gamut. Obviously, there are cases where it's obvious that abuse occurred. The evidence is overwhelming. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there's cases where it doesn't seem like the allegation rings true, and there are other motivations, financial motivations, or gaining an advantage in the custody case motivations. And these cases are tremendously complicated and tremendously charged emotionally. And so you have to be aware that how all of these factors can interplay in handling these cases. Not many people really are up for the task, but it is something that is an essential need in our legal system.
When a child is involved, can the child have their own representation? Do they have to have their own representation? What happens there?
A lot of the time, not all the time, but probably more often than not, the court can appoint a representative for the child. In a CPS type situation, it can be a CASA volunteer, or an attorney ad litem can actually represent the child. Oftentimes the court can appoint a guardian ad litem, which is a non-attorney, but a specifically trained social worker to represent the interests of the child and to conduct an investigation.
Why is it important, Sam, for when there's abuse, for everyone involved to have legal representation, including the accused? Some people may not fall on that side of things. Explain that to us a little bit.
Well, oftentimes people make the mistake of going in without representation, not understanding what they're agreeing to completely and the implications of what they're agreeing to. Or they obviously, if you go into court without a lawyer, you don't know the rules of the road, and you can unwittingly put yourself in a real bad position starting off before you get representation. It is important for both parents to be represented, because those of us who have a lot of experience in these situations can often make the process more efficient, more fair, and get to a better result ultimately for the child and the family in the long run.
And everybody deserves the proper representation.
Absolutely. Oftentimes you have an impression initially in a case that something happened, but upon further investigation and analysis, which takes sometimes a lot of work, you reach a different conclusion entirely. And so that's why it's important to have experienced professionals involved.
And I would imagine it's in those kind of situations, having someone like yourself who has experience and handles both sides of that, both family and criminal, that's invaluable, I would guess.
Yes, and although probably the majority of my representation in these situations have been on the accused side of the fence, I've also represented the victims and the accusers and their families. And so understanding both how the dynamics can work on both sides, as well as the child dynamics, is really important in doing a good job and making sure you get the best result possible.
Really interesting and important information today, Sam. Thank you for making some time to help us out.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Austin attorney Sam Bassett. I want to remind you again, if you'd like to ask Sam questions about your situation, just go to askthelawyer.com. Click the button at the top of the page that says Ask a Lawyer, and it'll walk you through the very simple process right there. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with Ask the Lawyers.